Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is part 2 of the hit and run update video. This one's going to be concerning the police and the police investigation. Straight off the bat, one thing I forgot to mention in the last video is those of you who are considering taking vigilante action against the suspected driver or the vehicle, please don't. Firstly, because the vehicle doesn't belong to the guy who committed the crime. It's a hire vehicle, so all you're going to do is damage somebody else's property. You know, some poor little old lady going to come back to her car one day and find it's all wrecked and it's not her fault. So that's a bad idea, and but I appreciate the sentiment. And also vigilantism against the individual, well, to be honest with you, I'd love to feed him to a pack of rabid dogs as well, which one of you suggested. If everyone starts taking the law into their own hands, we get anarchy, don't we? So perhaps that's not the best way to go forward with this. Perhaps what we should do is learn from the mistakes that were made and try and prevent this from happening again. You know, throughout my life, as many of you have possibly had, I've had mixed interactions with the police, sometimes good, sometimes bad. You know, I've met some police officers that are absolutely wonderful, very caring, genuine people who really want to see the bad guys go to prison, and they do all, you know, the best they possibly can to do that. And then I've met some police officers who can't tie their own shoelaces. In this situation, the policewoman that I dealt with during this investigation, I think, was one of the good ones. She seemed to show genuine concern for the situation. If people think I'm directly criticising her, I'm not. What I'm criticising, if I do have any criticisms of the police in general, it is of the formulation of the way they set out their investigations. Basically, I think what it is that all investigations, or when they're established, they have to follow almost a tick sheet. So each officer has a set of requirements they have to go through, a set of rings they have to jump through. And that makes it very restrictive for them to actually conduct a decent investigation, in my opinion. With me, and you guys, you've been suggesting various different things the police could have done to make this investigation go more smoothly, to gain more evidence on the driver, and so on and so forth. And the response that I always got when I suggested similar things to them is either we don't have the money for that, we don't have the time for that, or I'm required to do these things first. Okay, so, and by the time they've done all the other things they're required to do, whether those things are actually necessary or useful, they've run out of time. I hope that makes sense to you. And that's how it comes across to me. So even though she may have wanted to do things differently, her hands were tied by the rules and regs that are set out for her investigation. Obviously, the hit and run happened on the 15th of November 2014. I'm going to be giving the dates in the English way of giving the dates, okay? So for all your American viewers out there, that goes day, month, year, rather than month, day, year, okay? So on the 25th of the 11th, 2014, I had my first correspondence with the female officer that was dealing with my case. And she said, after so 15th and then the 25th, so it took them to about the 25th of the same month to find out that the vehicle actually belonged to a lease company. And in order for them to release the details to me, I have to send them paperwork, she says, in which they have 28 days to respond. She also says the keeper of the vehicle, at the time of your accident, again has a further 28 days to reply to the next lot of paperwork. So once they get the first lot of paperwork back from the hire company, which they have to sit around twiddling their thumbs for... You guys are persistent with your messages. I'll just have a look at this. Oh, cheers. That's Mikey Pullin commented, "You're looking well, Scott. Stay safe, man." Thanks. I really appreciate that. That'll be to one of my other videos. Right. So, where was I? Right, so yeah, so they've got basically 28 days for the lease company to reply who the driver is. Then once you know who the driver is, whether it be a company or a individual then you can next find out from them, they've got 28 days in which to reply to the next lot of paperwork. So you're looking at 2 months in order to establish the identity of the driver, bare minimum. Okay, and actually it took longer than that in my case. The vehicle was a courtesy car that was given to the individual who was accused, and that was because their other vehicle was in the garage. Now, whether their other vehicle was in the garage because they dented it from running other people down, or had a crash, or just simple engine faults, I can't tell you, but their other vehicle was in the garage and they were using this hire car. So she says, I have a copy of your CCTV footage. Well, closed circuit television. I don't know whether mini cameras count as closed circuit television, but that's what she refers to my video evidence as. And I will be speaking to the witnesses again in due course. I've checked the council CCTV and private CCTV systems from businesses at the location of the collision. However, these proved negative, which doesn't concern me as your footage is spot on. Now, that's a really interesting point, because later on she actually kind of changes the story a little bit. She initially says that she's checked all the CCTV in the area and it came up negative. I know that not to be strictly true, because the nurse that came out to see me when I was lying in the street was called out by a security guard who witnessed the incident happen on his monitor, his CCTV monitor. So I know for a fact there was at least one other video of me being hit by a car that was filmed from the NHS centre. Now that video evidence is now lost because it took the police investigation so long that by the time they realised they needed further evidence, all that evidence had gone. It took well over a year. So that's a really interesting point. And then she says this, which is also interesting: I cannot speed up the process. Again, like what I said before, that I have to follow. And it may seem that things are a little quiet, but that is only because I'm waiting on paperwork. So it appears to me that much of the police job is taken up by just sitting waiting for people to reply to their paperwork. They're not kind of active anymore, they're more passive. They send out a bit of paperwork, they wait for someone to reply. If they don't reply within 28 days, they send out more paperwork. It's not the kind of image of the police that perhaps many of us have, where they go beating on doors and dragging people out and like, where were you on the day in question, you know, kind of thing that they always show in the movies. But it's not like that. It's more like, someone sitting at a laptop or a computer just typing up and sending out letters. They're basically secretaries that carry nightsticks. There you go. So, then moving on to the 27th of the 11th, she says, your CCTV is more than adequate. So she thinks at the time that my video footage is perfect, that you can't do any better. And then she says, if we were dealing with a more serious injury or fatality, then of course we would be trawling through every camera in the area. However, in this situation, I intend to keep inquiries proportionate and realistic. This also goes for establishing the identity of the driver details. If I obtain driver details without following the correct procedures, then this would leave holes in my investigation. Of course, there are ways, but this incident does not require anything other than what has already been done. She believes that the video evidence I provided is perfect and we don't need any more video evidence. So she's basically saying, I don't need to check every camera, I don't need to check every source, I don't need to take the investigation any further than I already am doing, because we don't need any more evidence. Your CCTV video footage or whatever is spot on. That turned out not to be true, and that is one of the sort of pivotal points where the investigation kind of starts to fall apart. And this is early days still. We're still in November. And she also says, if we were dealing with a serious injury or fatality. So she doesn't see my injury as serious, and obviously it's not fatal, because otherwise I wouldn't be talking to you now. So it's like proportionate. They have to say, well, how serious is this? Okay, he was hit by a car, but he's not really that badly hurt, only got a back injury, internal hemorrhaging, still in bed. Yeah, it'll be fine. A lot of you suggested checking CCTV further down the road. There were cameras further down the road. There were license plate recognition cameras. There were cameras from the direction that he came from. Me personally, I would have widened the investigation, but the thing is, it's all about funding, it's all about time, it's all about what they deem necessary at the time, and that can often mess things up. Right, so the next correspondence I received is on the 16th of the 1st, 2015. She says, I've received a response from the lease company and all the relevant paperwork has been sent on to the person believed to be in possession of the vehicle. So it's taken her 2 months, or the best part of 2 months, maybe a little bit longer, to actually even get a response from the lease company. Now, we were originally told it would take 28 days. But you can see now that it's already taken 2 months just to get the name of the driver from the lease company. So what the hell happened there, I don't know. People have said that the car was subleased through different companies. So I guess that meant she had to send multiple 28-day paperworks to multiple companies and wait for those multiple companies to reply. Which just to me seems crazy that police can't just go down to the place and demand the details of a driver who's been in a crime like that. They have to sit around twiddling their thumbs. It just strikes me as extraordinary, and I was quite surprised. So then she's got the believed details of the driver. Next correspondent is the 2nd of the 3rd, 2015. So 1st, 2nd, 3rd, basically another 2 months later. And then she says, as I thought, the potential driver did not respond to the paperwork I sent out. So she sent it to the potential driver and he's not even responded. And he had 28 days in which to do that, so that's another month gone by. This is all time when he can be preparing his alibi, when he can be preparing his defence, where you could be repairing your car, where you could be making up stories. You know, this is all time that the criminal has got to basically build up a watertight alibi and a watertight defence. It's crazy. And she said, this is actually a good thing. It means that if we cannot prove that he was driving at the time, this is the first hint that she doesn't think she'll be able to, then he will still get an automatic fine and points on his licence. Okay? Purely by not responding to police paperwork. And in the end, that's all he got. It was just a fine for not responding to police paperwork. No driving offences were included. And she said, I would like to put your notes into the proper evidence format. So she was asking for my, statement of events, which I sent her. And she said, I've sent paperwork to 2 independent witnesses in order for them to complete their statements, neither of which have responded. So I was having a lack of response from the independent witnesses at the time. I don't know whether they responded later, but at this point in the investigation, they weren't responding. I cannot tell you what the outcome of this investigation will be, as nobody can place a suspected driver in the vehicle or give a description. Which means that, as I say, all the drivers around him at the time, nobody bothered to report it to the police and nobody bothered to follow the driver. Obviously, he still has to be interviewed and give an account, and I have no way of knowing what he will say or what he won't say during that. Okay, so that's the end of that email. Then we move on to the 3rd of the 3rd, 2015. Thanks for that. This was my account of events. I'm just typing it up, ! You did a great job. You should consider a career change! And I replied, what do you mean? And she said, it's a very good statement to say you've never written one, which is true. You'd make a good CID officer. She was basically complimenting me on the detail and the accuracy of my statement and saying that I should join the CID, which, you know, I don't think they would appreciate my Judge Dredd style of policing, but it goes to show that, you know, I was on the ball with my statement at least, and she was impressed, which was nice. I think she genuinely was as well. She used a lot of exclamation marks in that email. So now we're on to the 4th of the 3rd, 2015. And she said, unfortunately, nobody was in when I went to the suspect's address. I left paperwork through the letterbox which stated that he had to attend Nottingham Bridewell for an interview next week. This then gives me power of arrest if he fails to attend. So she still hasn't managed to get hold of the driver, and we're now the 4th of the 3rd, 2015. So several months down the line, and we still haven't even got hold of the driver yet. So now we're on the 10th of the 3rd, 2015, and she said the male was interviewed at Nottingham Bridewell today. He gave me a very wishy-washy account of events and stated that he did have the car in his possession at the time, but would not commit to being involved in a road traffic collision. He since then has rung me and stated that after discussing with his wife, She now thinks she was in possession of the vehicle on that day, so it looks like I'm going to have to interview her also. He admitted to failing to reply to police paperwork which I sent him, which is an offence in itself. Okay. Next story was the 30th of the 4th, 2015. Sorry for the late reply today. My first day back, I broke my wrist and damaged all the tendons while snowboarding. So she then took a leave of absence after that email I just read out because she injured herself during snowboarding. And then we're looking at 16th of the 5th, 2015. So again, a little while later. And she said, I've submitted the file to the law clerks for their review and advice. I've actually submitted 2 files, one for the male and one for his wife. So it's actually the police wanted to prosecute both him and his wife for not revealing the identity of the driver, right? And I'm totally fine with that, and I commend the police for trying to do that. Again, we can see the police did try, but it was the CPS that messed things up for them because the CPS had decided not to, and I will continue reading. However, they are only going to pursue the matter with the male party. So it was the CPS that decided not to chase both of them, just go for the man. Which I thought would be the case, however you don't know till you try. They were extremely happy with your footage and found it quite chilling that somebody could act in that way. I've submitted Royal Mail reports in respect of the paperwork he failed to send, which will secure 6 points and a hefty fine at least. But now the matter is in the hands of the gods. Now, 2 things about that. During the trial, which I'll talk about in the next video, they suggested that the documents that they were sent or sent back were lost in the post, which turned out to be false, and or a lie that couldn't be proven in court, but they were clearly lying. You know, it got lost in the post. Royal Mail recorded delivery, highly unlikely. And then the other one was hefty fine. Now the fine turned out to be 150 quid, which I'll talk in more detail about in the next video, but would you regard that as a hefty fine, 150 quid? I would say 150 quid isn't that big, personally, for nearly killing somebody. But there you go. Right, she also says, please try to remember that nobody has witnessed him drive in the vehicle, so that will be a sticking point. Although the law clerk stated that it would be great if we could secure a conviction, so they must think we stand a chance, you may not be called to give evidence depending on what happens at the first hearing. So actually I wasn't called to give evidence, I wasn't called to the trial, but I went anyway just to find out. Then we're down to the court date, 28th of the 9th, 2015. And on the 3rd of the 10th, 2015, I sent her my final email, one of my final emails. And she said, I acknowledge your email and understand your concerns. I cannot really add anything further to what the prosecuting solicitor spoke to you about. I'm going to talk more about that guy in the CPS video I'm going to do. Not a fan of that guy at all. Don't know how he has a job, but we'll discuss that later. After the hearing last week, yes, both parties were shown the footage and both parties were asked if anybody else had access to the vehicle and if anybody could have taken it without them knowing, and both parties were adamant that this was not the case. So the question I asked was, are they both sure that it was them in the vehicle? And are they both sure that they've seen the footage of me being hit? Because they were saying, I don't remember hitting them, I don't remember hitting a cyclist, and we don't remember who was driving. Okay, but they're adamant that a third party couldn't have had the possession of the vehicle. Now for me, they're admitting that they were both in the car. That is provable because they've admitted that. They both said, yes, me and my wife were in the car. Okay, so it's either him that was driving or it was her that was driving. All they're saying is, we don't remember hitting a cyclist. We don't remember who was driving. Really? Really? So basically their whole defence was built on, don't remember. And supposedly that is enough to fool the CPS. The CPS goes, well, if they don't remember committing a crime, then, well, there's nothing more we can do. It would be like me murdering somebody and saying, oh, I'm covered in blood, but I don't remember murdering somebody. And they go, oh, well, he doesn't remember, lads. Okay, well, off you go then, carry on murdering people. Next time we'll get you. Oh, you know, make sure you take a picture of yourself murdering the person. Next time you do it, okay? That'll make our life jolly easier. And then she says, there is still insufficient evidence to identify the driver. Now, I think there would have been more evidence to identify the driver if they had widened the investigation earlier on and not let the trail run so cold, and not let it go on for so long. Part of that was they weren't able to do that as police. They weren't able to move the investigation wider for funding and time constraints and all the other. And part of it was a reluctance to do that because I think she believed that my video evidence would be enough to secure a conviction. What she didn't realise, which is what I didn't realise, is we needed the guy's face, plain and simple, on the through the windscreen, which we didn't have at the time. And then she says, if you recall, the prosecutor explained, I really hate that guy, that it has to be beyond all reasonable doubt. He was saying that, not saying that to fob you off, at this level of proof the court requires. Well, the court requires this level of proof. He also explained that the investigation had been dealt with proportionately in the circumstances. I appreciate your frustrations, but I cannot help you any further. I did try and communicate with her further. She refused to respond, and then her operating officer, who oversees her department or her work, rang me back and basically gave me a long telephone conversation about how the police had done everything they can and how I should, basically shut up. And I said, look, if I'd been Prince Harry, I think this guy would be in prison by now, don't you? And he said, no, we treat everyone exactly the same. Do you really believe that? I don't. Beyond reasonable doubt, that doesn't apply with, say, for example, speeding fines. You can get a speeding ticket, and if you can't prove that somebody else was driving your vehicle, you automatically get the ticket, because that's like a civil action rather than a criminal action. In criminal law, you need more, like a greater weight of evidence in order to get a conviction because it's more serious. But the problem I have with that is that they use the words reasonable. So, yeah, I think there was reasonable evidence to suggest that he was driving, simply because it's a male driving position. It's a male in the picture, you can see it's a male, although you can't see his face clearly. I would say that's a bloke. There's no way it's a woman in my opinion. His name was on the paperwork and he does not deny being in possession of that vehicle on that day. So as far as I'm concerned, that is all reasonable enough, beyond my doubt, that he was driving. However, because they can't get him to actually admit to driving, then for them that's not reasonable enough. I think they're being totally unreasonable. But anyway, so that's the police investigation. Stick around for the CPS/court case video, which is coming next. Thank you very much for watching. Love all your comments, keep them coming, and as always, stay safe guys. Thank you very much.